Hi, this is Bobby from the Vespasian Warner Public Library District. I'm here with another tale from the archive where we share stories from DeWitt County history. Today we're continuing our murder and mayhem tour of the area around Clinton Square. We are actually just off the square right now on the east side in an alley that is technically called Moore Court, but was more popularly known during its heyday as Chicken Row. And some of you probably even remember Chicken Row. If Clinton ever had a disreputable or red light district, it would have been right along here. And looking at the space now, it's kind of hard to tell, but it used to be just packed with all kinds of little saloons and soup stands and tobacco parlors and billiard halls and all sorts of things. That did continue up a little bit. The building that is now the Vault was originally a billiard hall, and they were considered very disreputable, particularly in the early 20th century. So you can imagine these will all have been just wooden structures that frequently caught fire. And this was a very popular place for all the people who worked at Illinois Central Railroad, which was the big business in Clinton for about 100 years. Once they got their paychecks, they would come from the offices, which were down that way, over here to spend all of their money. And the one of the beer depots that served Clinton was right over on this block here, roughly where the new Save lot is now. And it was said in the 1890s that in 1 year, Clinton could do over $500,000 worth of beer business, and that's just beer alone. The sidewalks around here were in very poor condition. When it rained, they basically would flood and just become mud pits. A lot of the businesses on the square would get shipments of items in big wooden crates, and they would just toss the crates out the back door and let them rot. So that attracted vermin and all sorts of other things. And it was just a unsanitary, unhealthy, and somewhat dangerous place to be. So the 1880s especially saw an explosion of saloons all along this area, and frequent complaints to the city authorities that the city did not enforce the liquor laws, which prohibited any kind of selling of alcohol on Sundays. And there were times when Clinton was actually completely dry and alcohol sales were prohibited at all. Of course, a lot still happened around here, even with those laws in place. Chicken Row also was known for having what they called sky parlors, or secret rooms that were inhabited by questionable women. The newspapers never described exactly what happened in those rooms, but I'm fairly certain we can all guess. Speaking of the newspapers, the editorials frequently railed against Chicken Row. One letter to the editor from 1890 read, "What is the reason that the city authorities permit the sidewalk on Chicken Row to be crowded every evening, and especially on Saturday evenings during the hour of the band concerts, with a class of men so that it's almost impossible for a lady to wade through the vile tobacco juice and to escape the profanity and indecent language that fills the air? Have the women of Clinton no rights that the authorities are bound to respect? If the women have no redress, will not the decent men of Clinton come to rescue and help reform the evil? It is becoming worse all the time." And that letter was signed, "A Disgusted Woman." In 1894, blazing sunlight hit oil-soaked rags in one of the soup houses that used to be back here where this parking lot is now, and started a blaze. The whole saloon caught fire, but the fire department, which was located where the fire department is now, was able to make it in time and put out the fire. The editor of the Clinton Public newspaper stated, "Unfortunately, the blaze was discovered and Chicken Row still survives." Another fire struck just the next year at Grider's lunchroom when a night clerk threw a lit match too close to a gas stove in the kitchen, and it caused an explosion at 2:30 in the morning. The fire spread so quickly that only the cash register was able to be saved, so the night clerk grabbed it and ran. The building itself was a total loss, but it was soon replaced. Along with fires and rats, we also had violence, which is no surprise given all of the alcohol trade that was done here. In 1893, a man named John Murphy was near one of the saloons here when a gang of drunken men led by Clyde McDonald and Anson Bowers began to taunt Murphy, and then McDonald threw a brick and hit Murphy in the head. Murphy began punching McDonald. McDonald's friends caught up and beat Murphy into a bloody pulp. All the gang members were fined the following Monday for their crime. Around 1900, there was a huge brawl that broke out right here with so many men, at least 50 people, beating each other up. The Clinton police tried to stop it, but had no luck getting through, so they called the fire department. The fire department hit all of the men fighting with a hose, and that finally quieted them down. While this was not the first free-for-all that happened here, it appeared to be the worst. So over here on North Monroe Street, there was a saloon called the Blue Goose, and in 1909, two men named Henry Bowles and Alan Pryor got into a fight, and Bowles hit Pryor over the head with a beer bottle. And the beer bottles at this point were thick, heavy glass. They were frequently reused. And it actually killed Mr. Pryor, and Bowles was found guilty of manslaughter. There was one wild night here in 1912 that garnered $81.60 in fines, or roughly $2,623 today, when Clarence Linsby was fined for whipping someone and punching a brick wall, and a few others were fined for public drunkenness and disorder. At one point in 1914, there was a shooting gallery up here because someone thought that was a great idea to have guns and drunk people. In the back of Mr. Ethelfin's shooting gallery, he had mutoscopes, which were some very early movie picture machines. They were kind of like a flip book. He had about a dozen, and they were hidden behind a curtain. But the whole operation was shut down by police, and the owner was arrested because he had what they considered obscene movies in his movie picture machines. And during the man's arrest, a woman who had been making the shooting gallery her quote-unquote headquarters was given the option of going to jail or getting out of town. She chose to leave town. Some of the people who owned businesses here actually did end up doing very well for themselves. A man named Billy Shavers, who was a member of Clinton's African-American population, which was decently sized at the time due to the railroad, made enough money in his shoe shine stall that he was able to open a chili parlor right there on the corner of Monroe and Washington. In the 1920s to the 1950s, pool halls became all the rage, and there were several down here on Chicken Row. And as late as 1953, there were still newspaper complaints about liquor sales and other shady goings-on in the alley. But despite the numerous fires, the violence, and the complaints, the owners of all of this property refused to sell well into the 20th century. The money made from vice was just too good. Some of these business owners, however, did manage to become respectable. The most well-known was Herbert Vermillion. He owned the billiard hall down where the vault is now. He added a bowling alley to the basement, and the bowling became so popular that he decided to sell the building here on the square and built a bowling alley out on Van Buren Street, where Baum is now, and many of us will remember Vermillion Bowl. It was later the Clinton Bowling Alley, and that started as a business here adjacent to Chicken Row. Eventually, by the 70s, most of the questionable bars had moved from this area over to East Washington Street, where Save-A-Lot is now. Some of you might remember the Hot Spot, the Washington Inn, Where Else. I remember all of those from when I was a kid, and those were the ones you just kind of look sideways at as you walk down the block. And all the wooden buildings here were torn down, and we did have a nice brick building here for a long time that some of you might remember as Gaslight Square and the Maverick Steakhouse. And now, unfortunately, all that remains of Chicken Row is a parking lot. So thank you for joining me for this Tales from the Archive, and I hope to see you soon.